The screams started long before Ethan Hale even reached the underground prison chamber. They echoed through the cold metal halls of the captured alien facility, like a wounded storm, rising and falling in waves that made the human soldier pause every few steps. He had heard battle cries, desperate shouts, even dying breaths on faraway front lines, but he had never heard anything like this. It was a voice full of fear and exhaustion, but also defiance, as if the person behind those cries refused to break no matter how much pain she carried. Ethan tightened his grip on the flashlight in his left hand, while his right hand stayed ready on his harmless defense baton. The war had ended 6 months ago, yet many hidden alien bases were still being explored, mapped, and cleaned out. This one, the deepest bunker beneath a collapsed mountain on a remote moon, was rumored to hold experimental cages where prisoners had been kept. Ethan had been searching room after room for survivors, though none of the other soldiers wanted to come this far into the dark lower levels. But he went anyway, because if someone was screaming, then someone was alive. Dust drifted from the ceiling each time the metal groaned. The power grid flickered every few minutes, throwing the long corridor into half-light. Ethan walked forward with calm steps, though his heart beat faster the closer he came to the source. The screams sharpened. They weren't wild anymore. They sounded controlled, like the voice of someone who had screamed so much that her strength was nearly gone. Ethan swallowed and approached a thick metal door with strange alien symbols etched across it. The light above the door flickered red, but when he pressed his hand against the panel, the lock didn't resist. It clicked. The door slid open with a slow hiss. Inside, there was only one cage, and inside that cage was the woman he had been hearing. She was sitting on the cold ground, knees pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around them. Her skin glowed faintly pale silver with shimmering patterns like faint stars. Her hair was long and white, falling over her face as she shook. She wasn't chained, but the cage itself hummed with a strange energy barrier that kept her trapped. The floor was scorched in several places, as if she had fought it over and over again. When Ethan stepped into the room, she looked up instantly. Her eyes were glowing violet, huge, terrified, and yet alert. She didn't scream again. Instead, her breath froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Ethan felt the weight of the silence press on him. She looked like she hadn't eaten well in weeks. Her shoulders trembled from cold. But even like this, her posture showed strength that had not been broken by whoever had held her before. Ethan raised both hands slowly to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said in a calm, soft voice. She flinched at the sound of his voice, but her eyes didn't leave him. She seemed to examine him carefully. His armor, the insignia on his chest, the human-shaped outline of his body. "You are human," she whispered. Her voice cracked from too much screaming. "Yes," Ethan replied gently. "My name is Ethan Hale. I'm a soldier, but not your enemy. The war is over." That made her blink. Twice. Her trembling grew stronger, but in her eyes, something hopeful flickered. "The war." Her voice barely came out. "It ended 6 months ago," Ethan said. "You survived. I'm here to get you out." Her eyes slowly filled with disbelief. She looked around the room as though expecting shadows of her captors to appear. Her fingers dug into her knees. "No one comes down here," she whispered. "No one hears me. I thought my voice was lost forever." Ethan took a step closer to the cage. "I heard you." Her breath hitched. For a moment she simply stared at him, and Ethan felt as if she were trying to understand why a human, one of the species her people once fought, would be standing there, offering help. "What is your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, as if her name itself could bring trouble. Finally, she whispered. "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated gently. "I'm going to get you out of this cage." Her gaze lowered to the glowing bars. Many tried. None succeeded. The cage, it drains energy. Any force used against it only makes it stronger. Ethan crouched to inspect the alien machinery. It wasn't like anything his military training had prepared him for. The controls worked through a strange organic circuit that pulsed like faint nerves. He touched nothing yet. Instead, he looked back at her. "You don't look like a prisoner of war," he said softly. "Who put you here?" She closed her eyes tightly. It took her several long seconds to answer. "My own people." Ethan felt the air shift. "Why?" Her hands trembled again, but this time from emotion rather than fear. "They feared what I might become," she whispered. "They said my voice had too much power. They said I was born with energy they could not control. They called me dangerous." Ethan listened closely. She didn't sound dangerous, only hurt. "So they locked you away," he said. "They said I would break worlds," she murmured, eyes distant. "But all I ever did was cry for freedom." Her tears glimmered faintly in the dim light. Ethan felt a deep heaviness inside his chest. He had seen soldiers suffer. He had seen civilians trapped in alien ruins, but something about Lyra felt different, like she had been punished for simply existing. "Lyra," he said gently, "no one deserves to be locked away like this." She looked back at him with a slow, fragile breath. "Then why did you come?" All others who passed by turned away. "Because you screamed," Ethan answered simply. "And I don't leave living souls behind." Something inside her changed at those words. Her eyes softened, and a quiet relief washed through them. She whispered something almost too soft to hear. "You answered me." Ethan nodded. "I heard you, and now I'm here." He stood again and walked to the control panel built into the wall. It reacted to his approach with a faint pulse of blue light. He studied the pattern. The symbols weren't familiar, but the energy veins running through the cage seemed to connect to a core in the wall. He touched one symbol and the entire room hummed harder. "Wait," Lyra said suddenly. "Be careful. If you press the wrong one, the cage will strengthen." Ethan stepped back. "Then you tell me what I should do." She hesitated again but slowly moved closer to the bars. She raised her hand but didn't touch them. The energy made the air ripple. "There," she said softly, pointing to a symbol shaped like a spiral. "That weakens the inner field. But only if pressed after the circle-shaped one. So the sequence matters," Ethan muttered. "Yes. My people used complex patterns so no prisoner could escape alone." Ethan studied both symbols. "Tell me the full sequence. Tell me the full sequence." Lyra took a shaky breath as if afraid to hope. Circle, spiral, downward line, and then the small star. But only if pressed in that order. Ethan repeated the order to himself and placed his fingers on the first symbol. "Ethan," she said quietly. He looked at her. If it fails, do not stay here. The cage pulls in energy from anything close. It could drain you too." He smiled faintly. "I'm not leaving you in that cage." For the first time since he entered, Lyra's lips twitched in the smallest hint of a smile. Weak, tired, but real. Ethan pressed the first symbol. A low hum filled the room. He pressed the second. The hum trembled. The third. The cage flickered. The fourth. A crackling sound split the air. The glowing energy bars flickered violently, then suddenly collapsed inward like fading mist. The hum died. The room went silent. Lyra's eyes widened. She stared at the open cage door as if she feared it might be a trick. Ethan stepped forward slowly and extended his hand through the empty air. "You're free," he said gently. She didn't move at first. Her breath quivered. Her eyes filled again. This time not with fear but with overwhelming relief. She slowly stood, her weak legs trembling, and approached the opening. When her foot touched the ground outside the cage for the first time, she gasped softly, as though she had forgotten what freedom felt like. Ethan held out his hand again. Steady and warm, Lyra looked at it. Then she placed her cold, trembling hand in his. Her fingers tightened, not with fear, but with trust. Trust she had not given to anyone in years. Ethan supported her as she stepped fully out of the cage. Her legs almost gave out, but he gently caught her before she fell. She steadied herself with a deep breath. "No one has touched me kindly in a very long time," she whispered. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I promise." Behind them, the cage sparked once, then shut down completely. Lyra didn't look back. She just held on to Ethan's arm, as if he was the first solid thing she could trust in a world that had forgotten her. He guided her toward the door, but before they left, she spoke again. "Ethan, thank you." He nodded softly. "Let's get you out of here." As they walked toward the brighter halls, the dark underground chamber fell silent for the first time in years, because the screams that once filled it had finally been answered by the one human brave enough to listen. Ethan guided Lyra through the dim corridor slowly, letting her lean on him whenever her weak legs shook. The underground base smelled of dust and cold metal. And every few seconds, the lights flickered above their heads. Even though the cage behind them was now silent, Ethan stayed alert. A place like this could hide traps, broken machinery, or unexpected energy surges. Lyra had survived here for too long already. He didn't want anything else to harm her. She walked carefully beside him, her steps light, almost unsure. Every movement seemed to remind her that she was free now. Sometimes, she would glance over her shoulder, then quickly look forward again, afraid the cage might suddenly reappear around her. Ethan noticed. "You're safe," he said gently. "That cage won't trap you again." She looked up at him with those glowing violet eyes that still carried exhaustion but also a small spark of new strength. "You say it like you truly believe it." "I do," he replied. "I don't break promises." Lyra lowered her gaze with a small breath. "Humans keep their words." "I've heard that long ago. But I thought it was just a story." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't special. He wasn't a hero with medals, or a commander with power. He was simply someone who couldn't listen to screams and walk away. They continued moving until they reached a wider hallway, where alien control screens glowed faint blue. Lyra stopped, blinking against the light. "It feels strange," she murmured. "The open space, the brightness. You were kept in darkness for too long," Ethan said softly. She nodded, as if agreeing quietly with a truth she tried not to think about. When she touched the wall for support, her fingers left a faint silver glow that faded after a moment. Ethan watched carefully. "Does it hurt?" "No," she said softly. "It is just my energy. It leaks out when I am tired." He stored that information in his mind. Her energy wasn't stable yet. She needed rest. Real food. Warmth. Things she had been denied for too long. "Once we get to the surface," Ethan told her, "you'll see sunlight again." Lyra froze. "Sunlight," she whispered, as if she had forgotten the meaning of the word. He nodded. "And fresh air. And open sky." Her lips parted slightly. "I thought I would never see those things again." They began walking again. Lyra kept her hand lightly on his arm, not holding tightly but needing the presence. Ethan stayed patient, matching her slow pace. Each step was a victory for her. As they neared the end of the hall, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra gasped and immediately pressed close to Ethan, her hands gripping his arm with fear. "What was that?" she whispered. Ethan steadied her. "Probably the structure settling. This base is old, but stay behind me." Another tremor followed, stronger. A distant alarm whined weakly through the broken facility. Lyra's glowing eyes widened. "They must have installed an automatic collapse trigger," she murmured. "If the cage shuts down, the base begins to self-destruct slowly." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we have to move. Quickly." Fear flashed through her, but she nodded. Ethan took her hand firmly, this time not to lead, but to reassure her that she wouldn't be left behind. They hurried through a connecting tunnel. Even though Lyra's legs trembled, she pushed herself forward with surprising determination. Ethan kept glancing at her, afraid she might collapse any second, but every time he expected her to fall, she straightened herself again and kept going. "You're stronger than you look," Ethan said quietly. Lyra gave a small, breathless laugh, a tired but real sound. "Strength is all I had left." They reached a ladder leading upward. The metal bars were cold to the touch. Lyra stared at it with clear worry. "I don't know if I can climb that," she whispered. Ethan examined the shaft. It wasn't too long, maybe 2 levels up, but the tremors were getting stronger. They needed to move fast. "I'll go first," he said. "If you slip, I'll catch you." She looked at him with a soft expression that almost resembled trust deepening. She nodded slowly. Ethan climbed quickly, pushed open the hatch above, and pulled himself into a small maintenance room. Then he leaned down through the opening. "Your turn." Lyra began climbing. Her hands shook with every step, and twice she almost slipped. Ethan reached down, holding her wrist to steady her, helping her up until she climbed into the room. She sank to her knees, breathing heavily. "You did well," Ethan said gently. She lifted her head with effort, strands of her white hair falling over her face. "Only because you helped me." He smiled faintly. "Then, we make a good team." A soft light returned to her eyes at that, as if those simple words meant more to her than he realized. They moved out of the maintenance room into another hallway, this one less damaged, with working lights and open passages. The path split ahead. One direction marked with alien symbols. The other, leading toward a stairway that angled upward sharply. "Which way?" Ethan asked. Lyra examined the symbols carefully. "The left path leads to the hangar. The stairs lead to the surface. The hangar may still have working systems, but the stairs are faster," Ethan considered. "We don't need to explore more. We're getting out. Stairs it is." Lyra nodded. They entered the stairwell, but halfway up, her steps suddenly slowed again. Ethan noticed the faint glow on her skin, flickering unevenly. "Lyra?" She pressed her hand against her chest, breathing hard. "My energy. It's unstable. The cage drained me too much." Ethan knelt beside her. "Do you need to rest?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I feel light. Like my body might fade." He placed a steady hand on her back. "You won't fade. You're here. I won't let anything take you again." Her breathing began to even out at his calm voice. She lifted her gaze slightly. "No one has ever spoken to me like that," she whispered. "With..." Ethan looked at her gently. "You deserve care, and safety, and freedom." Her eyes softened again, and she nodded with slow acceptance. After a moment, she took a deep breath and stood again. Ethan stayed right beside her in case she stumbled. The stairwell led them to a final hallway. This one was wide, more stable, with panels showing faded warnings in alien language. A large metal door waited at the end, rusted but intact. Lyra touched the door gently. Her fingers glowed brighter, reacting to the alien material. Then the door shifted and slowly slid open. Sunlight flooded in. Lyra gasped aloud, a soft sound filled with shock and awe. Bright golden light poured over her silver skin, making her patterns shimmer like galaxies awakening. She stepped out slowly onto the rocky ground outside. Her breath trembled again, but this time, from wonder. Ethan stepped beside her, watching her face as she looked up at the open sky. Clouds drifted lazily across a wide blue horizon. The wind brushed through her hair. The cold underground darkness was finally gone. "It's beautiful," she whispered, lifting her hand toward the sunlight. "Yes," Ethan said softly, "it is." She turned to him slowly, the sunlight reflecting in her violet eyes. "I had forgotten the warmth, the color, the feeling of open air." "You'll experience much more," he said. "This is only the beginning." For a moment, Lyra simply breathed, letting the wind touch her face. Then her expression shifted, fear returning. "Ethan, your people, will they accept me? I am not human." Ethan shook his head gently. "War doesn't matter now. We value life. You're not a threat. You're someone who's suffered. That's enough for us to help you." "But what if they fear me?" she whispered. "Then they'll learn," Ethan replied calmly. "Because I'll make sure you're protected." Her breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, as if the promise itself was too heavy for her heart to hold. "You keep saying things that make me feel something I haven't felt in years," she said quietly. "Like hope." He smiled softly. "Hold on to it. We're not done yet." They began walking toward the extraction point. Ethan tapped his communicator. sending a signal to the surface team. The response crackled through. "Ethan? You okay down there?" "Alive," Ethan replied. "And I found someone. A survivor." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Bring them in. Med team will be waiting." Lyra tensed slightly at the sound of more humans, but Ethan reassured her with a gentle nod. "You'll be safe with them," he said softly. "I trust you," she whispered. As they walked across the rocky ground toward the rendezvous point, Ethan noticed how Lyra's steps grew steadier. The sunlight seemed to fill her with a slow, gentle strength. But her body was still weak, and she stumbled once. Ethan caught her immediately. She looked up at him with quiet gratitude. "You always catch me, and I always will," he said. Those words made her eyes glimmer with something deep and emotional, something she wasn't used to feeling. They reached the clearing where the rescue ship would land. The wind grew stronger, brushing against them. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself, not from fear, but from the overwhelming mix of emotions flowing through her. Ethan stood close, watching the sky as the ship approached. Lyra looked at him, her voice soft. "Ethan, thank you for answering my screams." He turned to her. "I didn't answer your screams, Lyra. I answered you." Her breath shook, and she looked away briefly to hide the emotion in her eyes. She had been caged, silenced, forgotten, but this soldier, this human she barely knew, had treated her like a person worth saving. The rescue ship descended, kicking dust into the air. Ethan stepped forward first, then offered his hand again. "Ready?" She looked at his hand, then she took it, with trust, with hope, with a heart finally starting to believe she wasn't alone. They boarded together one brave human who refused to ignore suffering, and one alien woman whose lost voice had finally been heard. The rescue ship rose into the sky, leaving the ruined alien facility shrinking behind them. Lyra sat beside Ethan on one of the cushioned seats, her hands resting quietly in her lap. Every few moments, she would look out the window, watching the world pass beneath them with wide, amazed eyes. Her breathing slowly calmed as they climbed higher, but Ethan could still see the lingering fear tucked deep inside her expression. He stayed beside her, close enough that she knew she was not alone. The med team waited at the far corner of the ship. They watched silently, unsure how to approach. Lyra noticed their careful glances and shifted uneasily. "They are afraid of me," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "They're just being cautious. You're the first alien survivor we've rescued from a bunker like that. They don't know your story yet." She looked down. "My story is not something most would want to hear." "I do," Ethan said gently. Lyra turned toward him slowly, surprised. Her eyes glimmered faintly as if his words softened something inside her. But she didn't speak yet. She simply held onto the warmth of his presence, which seemed to reassure her more than anything else. The ship flew for nearly an hour, crossing valleys and frozen mountains, until the human command base came into view, a collection of steel buildings, surrounded by communication towers and bright landing lights. When the ship touched down, the engines hummed softly and the doors slid open. A gentle breeze flowed into the cabin. Lyra froze again. The outside world was louder, brighter, and filled with the sound of humans speaking, machines working, and vehicles moving. She tensed beside Ethan, uncertainty clouding her expression. He noticed instantly. "Stay close to me. You're safe here." "Ah." Her fingers brushed his arm, seeking a familiar anchor. She nodded once, trusting him more than the environment around her. Ethan stepped out first, letting Lyra follow at her own pace. When her foot touched the metal platform, she inhaled sharply. Humans nearby turned to look, some with curiosity, others with confusion. But no one approached aggressively. The med team approached, slowly and respectfully. A doctor, a woman with kind eyes, lifted her hands to show she meant no harm. "Welcome. You're safe now. May I examine you to make sure you are not injured?" Lyra looked at Ethan immediately, silently asking what she should do. He smiled softly. "It's okay. She only wants to help." Lyra nodded faintly. The doctor stepped closer and scanned her with a handheld device. The device beeped several times. She's severely malnourished, the doctor said. Her energy levels are unstable. She needs rest, hydration, and medical attention. Lyra lowered her head, ashamed of her weakness. Ethan placed a gentle hand on her back. You survived something no one should have survived. This isn't weakness. Her eyes softened, but she didn't speak. The doctor offered a comforting smile. We've prepared a quiet room. No loud machines. No sudden noises. You'll be able to rest without disturbance. Lyra relaxed a little at that. Thank you. She followed them inside the base, staying close to Ethan every step of the way. The hallways were warm compared to the cold underground. Lights shone clean and bright. Human soldiers stepped aside respectfully as they passed. Lyra's eyes darted around, trying to absorb everything, but the unfamiliar surroundings still overwhelmed her. Finally, they reached a small room with a soft bed, blankets, and warm lighting. There was even a window showing the open sky. Lyra stood in the doorway, her breathing shaky. Her voice came out small. This room, it is for me. Yes, the doctor said. Everything here is yours. Lyra took a step inside, then another. She walked to the window and placed a hand against the glass. The sunlight warmed her skin, and her faint silver glow grew a little brighter. Ethan watched her quietly. It feels real, she whispered. Too real. Like a dream I am afraid to wake from. It's not a dream, Ethan said. You're free now. She turned slowly toward him. I don't know what to do with freedom. I forgot how it felt. Then you'll learn again, he said gently. At your own pace. The doctor excused herself, leaving the two alone. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed, her posture still unsure. Will they truly allow me to stay among humans? Of course, Ethan said. You're not a prisoner. You're a survivor. She looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly. Not from fear this time, but from emotion. You keep saying things that make my heart feel lighter, she whispered. It scares me, how much I rely on your words. You don't have to be scared, Ethan said. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time since he found her, she gave a small, genuine smile. Not tired, not forced, but full of quiet gratitude. I want to tell you my story, she said softly. You said you wanted to hear it. I think I'm ready. Ethan pulled a chair closer and sat beside her. I'm listening. She took a slow breath. My people feared me since the day I was born, she began. I carried energy they didn't understand. They believed it could destroy their world if it grew uncontrolled. I tried to hide it. I tried to be normal. But one day, the energy burst out when I was scared. It damaged a building. No one was hurt. But they looked at me differently afterward, like I was a danger. Her fingers curled into the blanket. I begged them to help me control it, but instead, they locked me away. They said it was for the safety of the Empire. Ethan felt a cold anger at how easily her own people had abandoned her. You were a child, he said quietly. They should have protected you, not imprisoned you. Her breath shook. I tried to stay strong, but the silence, the darkness, I felt like I was disappearing. I screamed because it was the only thing I had left. Ethan leaned forward slightly. And you never stopped screaming. That's how I found you. She looked at him with deep emotion. I screamed for years, but you were the only one who answered. He held her gaze gently. You deserved to be heard. A tear slipped down her cheek. She looked away quickly, wiping it with trembling fingers. I'm not used to kindness. It feels strange. You'll get used to it, Ethan said warmly. Humans can show a lot of kindness when someone needs it. She met his eyes again. Will you stay for a while? Of course, he said. You're not alone anymore. That seemed to ease her heart. She lay back slowly, letting the bed support her. The warmth spread through her body, calming the unstable energy inside her. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to rest. Ethan sat quietly by her side, watching over her as she closed her eyes. Her breathing became soft, peaceful. The faint glow on her skin steadied. Hours passed. The sun outside began to set, painting the room in soft orange colors. Lyra woke gently, surprised that she had slept so deeply. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was still there. "You stayed," she whispered. "I said I would," he replied with a smile. Something inside her chest warmed. She sat up slowly. "Ethan, what will happen now? What will become of me?" "Whatever you choose," he said. "You have a future now. You can learn about our world, meet new people, live freely." "And you?" she asked softly. "I'll be part of that future if you want me to be." Her breath caught. She stared at him with a growing softness, something gentle blooming inside her heart, something she hadn't felt before. "I do want that," she whispered. "More than anything." He reached out and lightly touched her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her fingers close around his slowly. "You saved me," she said. "Not just from the cage, but from the darkness inside me." "You saved yourself," Ethan replied. "I just helped you take the first step." The room grew quiet again, but it was a peaceful silence, one filled with hope instead of fear. Outside, the last rays of sunlight faded. Stars began to appear in the night sky. Lyra looked at them through the window, seeing freedom reflected in every shimmering point of light. "My voice was trapped for so long," she said softly. "But now, I feel like I can speak again." "Then speak," Ethan said gently. "The universe is listening." She turned to him with a warmth that reached her glowing eyes. "Ethan, thank you for hearing me when no one else did." He squeezed her hand lightly. "I'll always hear you, Lyra." In that quiet room, on a distant world far from the cage that once held her, an alien woman who had been forgotten by her people found something she never expected: trust, safety, and a human soldier who refused to ignore her suffering. She had screamed into darkness for years, and only one brave human had answered. Now, she would never have to scream alone again.